I was the 25th Premier of Ontario. I had the privilege of being the Minister of Education from 2006 to 2010. Did a master's degree here in adult education at OISE. Education was the motivator for me to get involved in politics in the first place. So it was very gratifying for that to be acknowledged. And then to be able to sit at the table with so many young people who are involved, needing to make sure that young people's well-being is taken care of, that we have equitable classrooms and opportunities for students across the province. So it was a real privilege, and I felt very honored. The point of publicly funded education for me is that it levels the playing field and it gives everybody an opportunity. But when it didn't do that, then it needed to be changed. And so I have seen the last 50 years the improvement in publicly funded education that was needed. It's not perfect, but we have a whole lot more supports and a whole lot more inclusion than we did when I started school in 1958. Children are whole beings, they are not just brains. And so when we talk about well-being in our schools and when we look at what's happening right now in our society, I think we're struggling to recover from a very unusual time of isolation. We've got kids who are detached from each other because of social media. On this International Women's Day, I think we need to be aware of those things, and we need to be aware in our own lives about what we can do to support the young women in our lives and to support the children in our lives who need adults who understand that they are whole beings, that they learn differently from one another, that their mental health depends on the environment that they are in. And so if we have to find ways to remove them from screens and help them to get outside and play in the forest or take on opportunities that will challenge them, then that's our job. The publicly funded education system can support the education of women, helping them to have a critical distance on how they are treated in the world and how the world treats other young women. I believe that we assume that we've come farther than we have. I believe that we assume that somehow the assumptions about women and what they can do and what they're capable of and how they should be treated somehow move to a place where those assumptions are no different than the assumptions that we make about men. And that's not true. And I think we've had examples of that very, very recently in terms of the Me Too movement, the harassment of women. I think uptick in misogyny that we've seen. I think that, populist politicians have had something to do with that. And I certainly felt it when I was the Premier. There was a lot of crap that came at me that was about me being a woman, being a lesbian. So I think that we've got work to do there. And it's not that I think that in our public schools there should be the proselytizing of one perspective or another, but treating human beings as equal, treating human beings with dignity and decency, that's not about an ideology. That is our value system as Canadians. Somehow there's sometimes less permission to talk about sexism and misogyny than to talk about other things, even like homophobia or Islamophobia or anti-Black racism. We almost assume that feminism did its work, and once we got to the third wave feminism, that it's kind of the work is all done, and that's a real mistake. When I retired from politics, a group of people around me created a scholarship for young teacher trainees here at OISE, a diversity and inclusion scholarship that will recognize young teachers who are equity seeking and who need support in that work. And so I hope that the scholarship in my name will help some young people to feel good about and be supported in their work to create more equity in our school system and in our society.